Hit record. Oh gosh, it's recording. Here we go. Let's do this. It's time for a podcast. Hello and welcome to In the Pocket, the bass guitar podcast where we get the lowdown on the low end. My name's Jonny, a totally average bass player, and each week I'm joined by a different co-host to talk all about that bass. So this week, I'm very lucky to be joined by Irish bass teacher and YouTuber Stephen McGrath. Stephen, how the flip are you?
I'm very good, Jonny. What's the crack with you? I think you were being a bit self-deprecating there. You're a good bass player. I like your...
I mean, thanks. In the grand scheme, I don't think so. But I like to go with like the world's okayest bassist. I feel like I can relate to that a lot.
Well, you can hold it in your band. That's your job. If you can do your job, you're a good bass player.
Exactly, and that is very underrated, actually. I would say so. Yeah, but yes, sound like you're doing great. Obviously, smashing the YouTube game at the minute. You've got your own podcast, BassCraft, which is super fun. Really love tuning into that and hearing all different bassists from across the world, which is really cool. So I thought it'd be bloody rude not to have you on here. And, you know, it's fantastic. Every week, we like to ask 3 questions to our co-host just to introduce them a bit before we get into the deep stuff. And by deep stuff, I mean bass. Yeah? Okay. So,
yeah.
The first question is the 3 words to describe your bass playing.
Okay, I knew this was coming, so I kind of got to think about it today. I'm gonna say aggressive,
Nice.
Creative,
Ooh,
and reliable. So they're my 3.
That didn't mean to sound so sexy, by the way. Oh. Unless it is reliable. Nice.
Nothing sexier than being reliable, you know.
Yeah, exactly. On time, punctual. Reliable. Yes, please.
That's it. The girls don't like the bad boys; they like the reliable boys, like me and you, Jonny.
In the long run, they know they're having a good time with the bass players. They're reliable. So why reliable? Tell me what you mean.
Well, yeah, I'm always kind of any band I was ever in. I was kind of like the leader or the guy who organized stuff. So that I always became. So it's not just my bass playing; it's just the role I take in the band. Like I remember, the first band I was in, like the guys used to love going drinking, and we'd be going to practice. I'd always organize the practice, and then inevitably they'd have a bag of cans, and I'd be like, "Come on, we have to practice."
No, put the can down.
So okay, well, we'll do 40 minutes of practice, then you can have your cans. It's like their mother. This is like from day one. I was reliable.
No, you're like, great. Now I've cemented my role as the dad in the band.
Yeah, I was always the dad in the band. So, and then in my bass playing, you know, I do a lot of high register stuff, and I use a lot of effects and distortion, modulation, whatever. But I do lay it down then, especially when there's a solo. I just, you know, do the bass thing as you're supposed to do also.
There's a time and place, isn't there, for that kind of thing? And knowing it is very key to being a good bass player, I think. So yeah, they're 3 great answers. I can kind of relate to taking, you know, the role in the band. I kind of feel like I do that a bit as well, where I'm like, right, I will do the social medias, right, I will take photos, right, I will do videos and all that kind of stuff. But
is it a bass player thing? I think maybe it just comes with our personalities that we picked up this instrument, because it finds a lot of people in bands who do that role are the bass player.
We've really got to earn our keep.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, we're really just slagging off bass players now, which is just going to lose us all the listeners to this bass players podcast.
I know, it's good to be reliable, you know. You'll always be in the band.
Exactly. You got to be the glue that gels it all together. That was how I always saw myself. And it sounds like, you know, that you're a very sticky, gluey man, meant in the best way. So the second question is, what bass would you consider as your number 1? Now, behind you there, I can see, now listeners at home won't be able to see, but I can see that there's a big wall of instruments back there. So which one would you consider your number 1?
That's easy. It's the Aerodyne, Fender Aerodyne. So I've had that. I've played over, like, I'd say nearly 1,500 gigs with that at this stage. Definitely over 1,000 anyway.
It's got a couple of fingerprints on it then.
It's in some state, and it has a bit of kind of history to it. Do you know? Have you heard of Rory Gallagher, the guitarist, blues guitarist? So he played the one Strat his whole career, and he bought it in this music shop in Cork. And I got that guitar secondhand. It was actually cheap. It was like €250 or something, €300, because it was all rusty and not looked after. It was a customer sale, like. So I got it in that shop, and it's awesome. I changed the pickups recently, and I always had a drop D tuner on it because I just like twisting it. You know, at the end of the song, I like to pull it down to go and then do this kind of wobbly thing with the tuner, and just handy.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone use it in that way before. That's cool.
Yeah, if the song is in D, I can push it up to E and then back down to the tonic, and vice versa. If we're in E.
Just hates using frets that much. I could do these two notes. Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But that's my number one. Amazing bass. I'd love to get another one. I don't know if you ever picked one up, but I'm a cheapskate. I know you're a cheapskate. And this one just screams quality. It's one of the only Fender style bass I've ever picked up where I went, this does feel better than a Squire. This feels it's worth the money.
Yeah, and those Aerodynes, I've loved those for a long time. Like, they look so good, and it's one of the only basses that Fender actually took photographs of that I was like, damn, because I feel like they don't do great photography of their own instruments. They always look better in person, I think. But the Aerodyne, oh my god, like the thin body on it, the binding, it's just beauty. What inspired you to change the pickups on it now?
Well, they weren't working. The jazz pickup hadn't worked in about 5 years, and
I mean, that's good reason too, I suppose.
And the knobs couldn't twist anymore because remember I told you it was rusted. So the volume knob only ever worked, and the second volume knob was stuck, and so was the tone. So I only had one knob for the first 1,000 gigs, and then I was like, when lockdown came,
having one knob.
But I said, look, I have time now. It's because it lives in the band's van, like, so I never would have had time to take it apart and have it ready for the next weekend's gigs. You know yourself, you just don't get around to finishing things. So I finally
and if you cock it up, then you're like, well, now what?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have that bass anymore
I finally had time, a gap, like 2 years nearly, to just say, put in new pickups, fix it up, so it's perfect now.
Yeah. Oh, amazing! You're able to dial in that bridge pickup finally.
And I don't like it at all. I didn't miss it. I have no use for it.
You're like, oh, no, just stick with the P bass, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That's the thing I find as well. Like, I've just got this G&L, which is a PJ, and I love a PJ, but now I find myself gravitating more and more towards just a P bass. Okay, so the last question I like to ask the co-host is, why did you pick up?
I suppose it wasn't really like a lot of people. It's either they loved the bass or they were a bad guitarist and someone needed a bass player. It was more for me like I was trying to find my tribe in school. I played sports, but I never felt like a sports dude. Like, I was good at it. I won loads of medals, but I never felt like those people were my people. And then I was kind of getting into computer games, and I was hanging out with all the geeks, and I was trying to do a bit of programming, and I was terrible at that. And then I was in transition year. It's an optional year in Ireland in school, and there was a lot of musicians, and I was like, and I got on well with them. So I said, these could be my tribe. So they needed a bass player. Obviously, there always is a need for a bass player. Mm-hmm. So that was it. I just got a bass, and boom, I was going. I barely even heard music. I didn't even own a CD until I was about 14 or 15. I think I bought Eminem Stan. That was wow. I didn't hear any music at all. But my brother had a big record CD collection, so I got some Motorhead and some Doors, and I was off. But I completely didn't listen to music, or it wasn't even in my around me at all until I was about 14 or 15. And shortly after, I was learning the bass. So all the bands I was hearing for the first time, I was learning the bass lines as I got into them. Like.
Yeah, I think that's the way to be. And I won't go any further with that because there's a question coming up that I think we'll be able to go deeper into that later on. But yeah, that sounds. So for me, it sounds like that you were super cool with the sporty guys in school. then you thought, nah, I'm going to go to the nerds, or they're not quite cool enough. So then the musicians was like the middle ground between cool and nerdy.
I don't think I thought about it that much.
No. Oh, well, that's great. Sounds good. So we've gotten to know our guests. So let's move on to the first question. Okay, so our first question comes from William Garcia over on Instagram, who says, I know this links into what I was just saying, what we were just saying. I know you consider yourself a failed guitar player, failed in quotes, because we're better now. He said, so what did you do to learn to play it? Did you take lessons, books, videos? How did you start playing the bass in that way? How did you learn? Now, you do a lot of bass teaching, am I right? Mm-hmm. So as a teacher, what would you say is the best way for someone to learn bass? Obviously, it's different for everyone, but what kind of things do you tell people?
Well, I kind of teach them how to do what I didn't do, which was I didn't learn by ear at all. I just had loads of tab books, and then, which, is okay, but I didn't really understand what was happening in those songs. So I do teach through songs, but I won't ever teach a song without explaining what's happening in this song. So I'll explain what's happening with the notes. Is it a minor seventh? What's the rhythm? What's the bass sound? So it's important to know what you're learning in a song. Don't just go learn loads of bass lines. Really look at the note choice that he made and analyze the bass lines. So then it becomes part of your own vocabulary, I think. And mess around with the stuff you learn. Like if you learn a little line from one song, try and make your own thing from it. Be creative. I do a lot of that with my students. I get them to write their own bass lines and have a jam at the end of the lesson to try and be creative, with what they're learning.
Yeah, I think having a jam with it, that's a great bit of, a great way to learn, to develop your own style and take in all these inspirations from other things. I think that's a great answer. In terms of how I approach that as well, I first learned, I think my sister gave me her 3/4 size acoustic and had written on the side, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the frets, like tab, she'd written letters going all the way up and then numbers across the strings. So I was like, oh, A1, she was trying to teach me like that. And then when I wanted to get a guitar teacher, showed him that, he was like, oh, that's like tab. Here's tab. And so I started learning that way, but also, like you said, starting to pick songs that I liked or liked the sound of and started trying to learn those. And I was quite into rock and then getting into heavier music as well. So I started learning just the songs that I liked. And so and now I've had a few books when I've done grades and things like that, or needed them to learn them for music GCSE. I got an A, by the way. My proudest moment.
I didn't do music in school at all, so there you go.
Oh, so I'm technically more qualified than you on this.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
No, in no other way. And lessons, that's where it stemmed from as well. And videos, I think videos for me, I always use as reassurance or backup. I'll try and learn something by ear, and then I might watch a video of someone doing it and be like. Because sometimes reading a tab, if there's a bit hidden in a song in a bass line, a tab doesn't always tell you how it's played. Like a certain hammer on, the musical notes will be there, but it's oh, I don't quite know. When you play it slowly, you're like, oh, I don't really understand how this is translating into that riff. So sometimes I'll go and watch a video on it. So I feel like I don't really utilize, lessons anymore or books. I will occasionally look up a tab if I want to learn a song quickly, or if I don't do it by ear. But yeah, videos, I think obviously now YouTube is massive, so there's so much content on there for learning songs.
Well, I got lessons off a drummer then after I could play already. I could play, had the chops, and I could play all my favorite songs. But I got lessons off a drummer who taught me theory, which was amazing. Chris Faby So he was a jazz musician. He showed me all the theory and walking jazz bass lines and all that stuff, which today you could learn on the internet, like with Rick Beato. And I think that's really important as well, like to get your theory chops down. Like,
yeah, definitely. And now this, I'm going to upset you now because I'm terrible at theory. I did GCSE, but I didn't go any further than that. And in terms of like reading music, I'm awful. And I don't think there's necessarily anything to be ashamed about with that. I'm, very happy to admit that, and that I learn in a different way. But it's definitely an important thing to learn. I kind of contradict myself back and forth here, but what I'm trying to say is that you should find the way that works best for you to learn. For me, the idea of theory, I'm like, it bogs me down a bit, and I kind of, it makes me lose fun a little bit. But if you want to further yourself and understand a bass line more, what you said about getting them to jam over a bass line, I think is great, because and understanding, you've done a couple of videos on like breaking down a bass line and going into really big detail. And one side of that is like the technical stuff, and then the other side is like the feel that it gives off, and like why they've chosen to do that stuff there that isn't necessarily in the written down musical theory, but it's what that they were going for. And so I think there's two sides to it there, which is really interesting. And I kind of fall more on the feel side, where I'm like, oh, like that ghost note really works there because this. And I don't mean it in a sense like, oh yeah, it's like a poem, like it's a metaphor for this. That's not what I mean. I just mean a literal feeling that it might invoke, or like why that bass bit fits there.
You probably know more than you think, though, when it comes to the theory. You probably know all this stuff, but you don't have the language to explain what it is. So I think it would be hard for you to figure that out. Like,
that's the same with most things, to be honest. I don't know how the language. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right. To be fair, like, and you can pick up a lot from other people in that regard, which is why I love doing like YouTube stuff, because I've learned so much from other people. Normally people saying, you don't know this, man. I'm like, oh, great. I didn't know that. Thank you. Thanks for that.
There's always one person saying, but this is actually the way it is.
No, thanks. Okay. So that's great. Thank you so much for that question. Let's move on to the news. Okay, so the news this week has been a bit of a mixed bag. I've got some older news in here, and then some that people might have missed, but it's quite cool anyway. Let's start with the news from Ernie Ball, a Music Man. There's been a couple of things coming out from them, which is quite exciting. So first off is a new signature model from Tim Comerford. So Tim is the bass player of Rage Against the Machine. You probably, if you don't know Rage Against the Machine, you probably do. You've probably heard their songs around. And Tim is obviously the bass player. He's well known for using a lot of Ampeg stuff, and then also with Stingray. I know he's used jazz basses as well, I believe.
He had a lot of jazz. Early in his career, he was jazzing it up.
Yeah, absolutely jazzing it up. And now mainly uses Stingrays. So his Stingray, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah, I absolutely love his bass playing. He's a beast.
Yeah, and like you said, like you're an aggressive player. I'm an aggressive player. That man's fingers. Oh, what I'd let him do to me.
I don't know what to make of the kind of hiding what pedals he uses. Did you ever look into his pedal? He puts like dummy pedals on the board sometimes to confuse people. Yeah, I saw a deep dive on his board. All the things are covered, and sometimes there's dummy pedals on, so you aren't sure what pedals he actually uses.
I never knew that. That's so interesting. So what is interesting about these basses that he's brought out is that there's not just like one, there's four. And they're all different. I mean, two of them are different, I suppose. And then there's some different colors. So you've got a black one with the roasted maple neck, which is full long scale and active. Then you've got a full long scale, which is passive in natural. Then you've got a short scale, which is active in natural. And then you've got a short scale, which is passive in vintage Sunburst. So there is you've got to be quite lucky to be like, yes, I love the natural with rosewood fretboard and long scale. Perfect. Or like, they don't do the different versions in different colors and configurations.
What's that about? That I was thinking I wanted to get the short scale one in natural, but what it's a weird configuration.
Yeah, it's so the short scale is natural, maple neck, and active, which great. But if you really like, I quite like the look of that.
I like the natural one, yeah. Or did you like the Sunburst?
I quite like the Sunburst one, yeah. I like the roasted maple headstock on that. It looks cool. But then it's like, that's passive. Oh, okay. So I can't have the active version unless I get a short scale, unless I get the natural one, which is fine. It looks amazing as well. But like it's weird that there's these combinations, which is great. But then it kind of like locks you into no, you have to have it like this. So some features that it's got a different bridge, so it's got the foam rests in there that you can turn up.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even know he used that in his sound.
I didn't either, which is really, like when you think about Rage Against the Machine and like that aggressive playing style, you just don't think about that at all.
Yeah.
And so that's a really cool feature. I really like the matte black hardware, especially on that natural long scale one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that looks awesome. And then you've got a thumb rest on there by the pickup on all of
finger ramp,
yeah, which is really cool.
That's Gary Willis kind of invented that. It's so that you don't, the way when the proper technique is not to pull the string, but is to follow through. So It's so that your finger doesn't go in further than it should, and apparently it helps you play faster.
Yeah, that's a great shout. I like that it's functional in that way, and it adds a little bit extra. I've never thought about putting one on my own bass though. I didn't know that about the technique that it inspires, so that's very interesting. I saw Patrick Hunter's video on it, and yeah, it sounded great. It didn't sound like anything out of this world in terms of like a Stingray, but there's only so much a Stingray can do. I feel like they kind of get to this sound, and it sounds incredible. But I don't really ever hear that much of a difference.
But that's it, isn't it? Like, even if, which it's never going to happen. Hey, someday maybe if Fender said we're going to do a custom Aerodyne for you, you're kind of thinking, how can I improve it? It's just going to be micro improvements anyway. Like you can't really improve them that much. Because if you pick this bass and you love it, it's going to be tiny things that really only apply to you. Like that's why a lot of these custom guitars are almost exactly the same. Look at even the mentioned Guitar World, the PRS John Mayer did. It's pretty much just has a different shaped headstock. And
exactly, and it's like, if you made that yourself, you could do it for like a quarter of the price because it's got their name on it. It's like I say, like $2-3 grand. It sounded. I want to clarify. It sounded like I was being negative about the bass. Then and the sound. I'm not saying that. That's exactly what we were just pointing out there. Like, I think Stingrays are incredible sounding, and I love them. But
those mute pad things are expensive actually to get for your own bass. So that's definitely a really cool feature that makes it more versatile.
Absolutely. Oh, I really want this natural one now. I've been looking at it.
I'd like the short scale. I think it would be really cool as a short scale.
Yeah, interesting that he's gone with a short scale, because I didn't know that he played any short scales either. Maybe that's just to give people options.
Yeah, it's just for option.
Yeah, interesting. I suppose just jumping on that hype, that short scale hype.
Yeah, they're great. You need to get a short scale. You're lacking in the short scales.
Hey, I've got one.
Oh,
I've got the Gretsch. What's it called? Electromatic G220. Which is awesome. I love that thing.
Yeah, I played the Bronco. I did a bass course for the council here, and I just said I want short scales because the average age was like 10. So I said, just get all short scales. In the end, they couldn't source them with COVID, but they got a few Broncos. And I have to say, I was not impressed by those Fender Broncos.
No,
they feel like a toy. Like the most impressive bass that they sourced was like just a P bass by SX. It was lovely, like really nice. But those Fender Broncos, I don't know what to make of them. Like,
nah, that it gets down to that level, like the Bullet series, like basses they used to do as well, where it's like super entry. Like you used to be able to get them in Argos, like super cheap, super just consumer. You have them, for everyone that just wants to start. That It didn't feel like the care went into them. The Bronco's been going for a long time. And I just wish that they'd transform it into the Music Master. It was the Music Master, wasn't it? That body shape is.
So. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish they'd just like bring out a classic vibe Music Master. That would be great.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, because the Bronco it's
cheap.
It's on that
it just
level.
feels cheap, like.
Yeah, and it's got that. It's a guitar pickup in there as well, isn't it?
And has one of those horrible bridges that you can't individually adjust the strings. It's like an old Telecaster one.
Yeah, proper like 50s style, which is just no good now. Let's move away from that. Speaking of moving away, let's move away from this. We're getting very distracted as always, but that's good conversation.
Well, I'm a very distracted person. I'll let you know. Just let you know. I was supposed to be doing a video today, and I ended up just writing a riff with loads of distortion and putting it online.
Oh, but that's worth it in the end.
Yeah.
So keeping in with Ernie Ball, they have also launched their July 2021 Family Reserve collection.
Ooh, now, nice name.
I know. I didn't really know what these were until this was out. So, just learning all the time. So the Family Reserve, from what I understand, is models that they've built literally and reserved back for family members and for artists.
Jonny, it actually sounds like a new brand of tea, doesn't it? Family Reserve.
Oh like, my God, come and get your Family Reserve whiskey.
or tea, or fine tea, it sounds more like hand-picked in India, Family Reserve, something like that.
Get your Family Reserve wine. Sounds wonderful. I want some now, but I don't want to pay these prices that they're charging for this. I hope the Family Reserve tea is a lot cheaper. Being cheapskates. So yeah, it's interesting. So you might get some really unique designs that have never made it into production, but they're like the brainchild of, they basically say to their family, well, what do you want? What should we build for you? Money's sky's the limit, let's just make something. And I want to see some ones that they've gone to artists to build, and then it's not really gone anywhere, so then they just put it into this collection where they've got the prototypes.
What is the crack with it? I only see two basses. There's a bongo, a white bongo, and just a Stingray that has black and gold. Is that the family collection?
Yeah, well, that and the two guitars that they've got there. So fair play that the basses are 50% of that, but that's not exactly hard because they're only two.
Yeah,
but yeah, so they seem to release them like fairly rarely. Like I went on their website earlier trying to find all the information about these for today, and they seem to release them like just sporadically. Like here's the July ones, but they're cool designs, I think.
It says there's only 106 of one of them left. So yeah, that's cool. They're very limited.
Yeah. I just read that as well as you were saying it. So the Stingray, we've got a dual humbucker, no pickguard on there, maple neck. Looks like there's some kind of, what is it? Oh, just says maple neck and fingerboard, but it looks like a fancy fingerboard from the picture they got there.
It looks like burled or flamed maple.
Yeah, it really does, certainly. And then it's got all matte black and gold hardware. Now, what I like about this is that when you think about like gold or matte black hardware, it's kind of like, well, it's both, isn't it? Because
it's a combo. That's really cool. I never saw that before.
No, like even in the pickups, the magnets are gold.
Yeah,
which I love gold. And
I think it looks better when it gets old. When it's kind of has that patina on it. So when you buy cheap gold hardware, it ages really quick. But this mightn't age that quickly. Definitely,
this is pure 24 karat. Yeah, definitely, and like you get that like anodized look, and
that's
really nice. Yeah, so I like the Stingray. It's pretty cool. Then we've got a couple of guitars. Don't care about them apart from that Cutlass because it is.
Well, a Silverburst Stingray, that would be pretty awesome.
That will be. We've got a Silverburst Stingray guitar here, but get out of my sight. Then we've got the Bongo 5. Now, whilst we were talking before we started recording, you said about, they've only got 66 of these worldwide. That's pretty...
Get it. It's only $2,999.
Yeah. Sign me up. So we've got roasted maple neck, white matching headstock, gold hardware, and that signature toilet seat body. So you can have that really, really expensive poo that you've always wanted.
And that's kind of a nightmare for me too, with all those knobs. I just don't get active basses. I just can't get my head around them. It's like
6 knobs. There's nothing wrong with lots of knobs, unless it's on a bass, because it gets a bit confusing, doesn't it? I certainly found that with my Sire M. I always forget what it is. My Sire M7. It had like 2 switches and like all the preamp and all the.
I have one, yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
M7,
yeah. It's a great sounding, feeling bass, like the thinnest necks I've ever had.
I'm not really a fan of it. I'm definitely going to shift it, I think. I find all the buttons and stuff really annoying, and it's just like, what am I doing here? What do I do with these?
Exactly. That's what I think. It felt great and it sounded great, but I just hated all of the controls on it. It was just too much, and it took away the fun from playing. It made me realize that I really like a simple setup and a simple bass. I want the bass to be passive, just have it sound. There it is. That's why I've gone into really liking P basses now.
Why do you never see like well, maybe I'm wrong, but I know Marcus Miller plays basses with lots of knobs and stuff, but you rarely see like a professional bass player in a big band playing one of those active basses with loads of buttons, because really, when you're on a big stage, like, you're not going to be able to dial in your sound with all them, but the front of house is going to do the main sound, and you just want to get a solid bass sound. Those knobs are not going to do anything for you in a huge stage. Like,
no, honestly, for 90% of us, we just want something that's consistent, reliable, and it's going to make the sound man smile.
Yeah, but I'm not shitting on Sire. They're a great company. The basses are savage. Like,
absolutely, and they have revolutionized and given the industry a big kick up the bum, I think, Sire, because they've just come out of nowhere and be like, ha, ha, here we are, like, here's this incredible quality.
Especially Fender. They scared Fender, I think, with the quality of their P basses and jazz basses. Like, they're awesome.
Big time. All the Squire content that I do, everyone in the comments is always like, yeah, but Sire. And I'm like, yeah, to be fair, yeah. But yeah, it's all the active stuff. I want them to do more passive stuff, which is why I have one of their new 50s P basses on pre-order.
Oh, nice!
I'm very excited to get that. But yeah. Anyway, back to Music Man. Some really cool, interesting things in there, and I want to keep an eye on these more, because I want to see if there's any that like artists designed. And
so is it once a month, Jonny, that it changes this family reserve?
Oh, is it once a month? Is it?
Or is it every month that it changes, or how does it work?
I don't know. I know it's. Let's have a look. BFR Family Reserve. Oh, that's this. I'm already on the page. I don't know, because when I found like the listing of all the different ones, they were a bit sporadic. Like, it wasn't every month. So I guess they just do them. Oh, it says this month features this. So I don't know. If you're listening on whatever device you are, DM me. And you know the answer, give us a DM on Instagram.
Slide into his DMs.
Exactly. Slide straight on in. It's a warm, happy, cozy place. So come on in. Okay, so the last bit of news, I hate to end on a bummer. And, this isn't the most recent news, but ZZ Top bassist Dusty Hill died at age 72. So,
I know.
Sucks.
I actually had dinner with ZZ Top about 5 years ago now. I supported them in Cork. Like,
no way! I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we were doing like a show in a few months in one of the main venues in Cork, and so obviously we were talking to the guy, and he said, ZZ Top are coming soon. We'll try to get you a support slot. And I was like, awesome, that'd be amazing.
Yes, please.
Heard nothing back anyway, so me and all the guys in the band bought tickets to see ZZ Top, and we were booked for the show, the after show at midnight, the ZZ Top after show. And then at like 2:00 in the day, my phone rings and it's like, so are you set for tonight, ZZ Top? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, you have the slot, it's on. He's like, I haven't heard from you in like 2 months. What the hell? So I had to ring the drummer. He was available. I was trying to contact the singer. I couldn't get through to him.
Oh my God. Please.
Yeah, he had to load in at 5. But luckily we were all available because we had bought tickets to see ZZ Top. So we made it down anyway, and we had dinner in the crew area, and I didn't get to talk to Dusty, unfortunately, but Billy Gibbons came up and said hello to us, and brief chat, like saying hi and all that, like. But yeah, it's really sad to hear about Dusty dying. Like, he was an absolute legend and a gentleman by all accounts. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. An inspiration to loads of us out there. So rest in peace on Dusty Hill.
I was actually making a bass that's like a tribute to Dusty before he died. I'm working on, now that I tinker in my shed making basses, so I'm working on like a jazz bass with an upside down headstock, Telecaster headstock as we speak. So, and it was kind of inspired by his basses. So it's definitely going to be a tribute to him now. Like,
absolutely, because I love a reverse headstock, and he's got that custom shop, like it's like a 50s P bass, isn't it? But with the headstock reversed. That's awesome. Oh, what a cool little coincidence. I didn't know that. That's really cool. I mean, not cool that Dusty's passed on. I mean, cool.
Yeah, well, I tell that story a lot. I'm surprised I haven't told you. Like, people are like, yeah, we know you support his Easy Top. Come on. Tell us another. I actually told it to someone at my house once because they were talking about Easy Top, and I said, oh yeah, I supported him once, and they looked at me like I was full of shit, and I was like, turn around, because there's the poster from the gig is on the wall. I was like, there you go.
There's our name. We haven't really spoken about your band. For those home, might not know, tell us about your band.
Crow Black Chicken is the name. So we're like a blues rock band, and we've been going 10 years. We've got 3 studio albums and 2 live albums. So we're kind of known as one of the hardest working bands in Ireland. We do like over 100 shows a year, but we kind of got our big break. We were, it was just the usual band. I've been in loads of bands. We did it. We were really into it, but we weren't sure where it was going. But then we won this competition, the Battle for Glastonbury, the All Ireland Battle. And a blues rock band winning a competition like that is not that likely, but we won it anyway. And we got to play Glastonbury, and that kind of gave us a kick up the ass to be thinking, hey, this is really good what we're doing. Like, let's, go even harder at this and maybe go full time. So yeah, we're still going good,
That's awesome. Amazing. Cool. Well, that seems like a good time to move on to the next segment. Musical interlude. Okay, so this is the second question, and this one, I have to admit, I did lose the name of the people that sent it in because I'm an idiot, and I asked on a poll on Instagram for you to submit questions, and I looked at them, I wrote them down, and I thought, I'll go back and look at the names, and then of course it expired, so I lost all the names. Yeah,
that's annoying, isn't it? They just disappear.
It's a real pain. Like, so annoying. So sorry to everyone, and this is actually a bit of a combination of a few questions, and it is, what bassists inspire you to, air quotes, get good? Like, who are you gawking at the minute that you're like, man, they are great and I want to be like them?
It's definitely not probably the technical guys at all. I think that's more of a teenage thing, isn't it? Like, when you see these shredders, or obviously Jacko inspired everyone with his technique, but at the moment it's I like Rennie Fluxenhauer. Do you ever watch him on Bass the World?
Oh yes, yeah, of course. And you've had him on your podcast.
I had him on here, yeah. On my podcast. But I love his playing, and also someone who plays kind of like him, Ian Allison. I love what he does too. Like, just these amazing tones, and it's all about like the recording sessions he's doing, and it's kind of like real world bass playing as opposed to social media bass playing. Definitely.
And I think that is such a difference because, like you said, Jack, great, but it's not practical for everyone. And I think it really annoys me in demos when people are like, and this is how this sounds. I
know, it's ridiculous.
Insane slapping thing. And he's just like, that's not representative. That's why I kind of pride myself in not being like incredible in any of my demos, because I'm like, you know what? Most people are probably going to be able to relate to this more, and it'd probably give you a more realistic example.
Well, sure, you're not giving off the sound of the bass if you're just shredding. Like, you just need to play it normally, like let it breathe or whatever.
It's just not functional. So, and one of my answers for this, because I got a few, was Ian. So that's great that you said that. For those who don't know, and let's be honest, you probably do know, Ian Martin Allison is an incredible bass player and content creator who does a lot of work with Scott's Bass Lessons. And it's just really, if you want to be inspired by a guy, go and check out his stuff. Just his personality, I think he just glows on screen, and just he has this amazing personality that just draws you in. and
But
makes you want to pick up the bass. Like every time I see a clip of his on Instagram or a video, I'm like, the grooves are great. And like, he's an incredible player and technical, but even the simple things and the way he explains it is just really inspiring, I think. So he inspires me to pick it up and to play more.
Yeah, I think that what happens is, like, which for all of us, you're at a certain level and you think to get better, you have to do this stuff that seems amazingly hard to get to, like something really fast or a new technique. But he's kind of shown that with what you have, you can still improve so much in terms of like the tone of your bass and how you're executing the notes. You don't have to be doing like these super fast runs or bebop lines. Just in your little whatever genre you're in, there's a whole world of practice and improvement you can still do without having to go outside what you like to do. Like, there's a whole world of improvement just in your own genre. And for me, that's what he shows, like, because he's way better at getting the tones than me and way better at all that rock stuff. So that inspires me. I'm like, wow, I can just get better at what I'm already good at. That's what I can concentrate on.
Absolutely. And that even trickles down to kind of the more stuff that I concentrate on, which is like affordable gear. In that you can get good sounds out. You don't need to spend loads of money. You don't need to spend loads of money. As just said then, you don't need to spend loads of money on really expensive gear, because you can work your own technique. You'd be amazed of how much, it sounds really cliche, but how much tone is in your hands, and what the player has impact on that. And I think Ian is a great example of that. And don't get me wrong, he's playing nice gear.
His DI box is worth like €1,000.
Yeah, I know.
A noble DI, but he has savage gear.
Yeah, but like, you put that in my hands, it's not going to sound as good, obviously, because he's incredible. And so he's just one of those that really inspires me in that way. I had DM today, actually, when I put out some more stuff about podcasting things happening tonight, and someone was like, "Hey, you should get Ian Allison on there," and I was like, yeah, that would be amazing. I'd love to have him on. Please.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll come on. He loves talking about bass. Sure, it's his thing.
That's the thing. Oh, I think I might be a bit too scared though.
But also, I suppose the pick in the last 5 or 6 years, the pick revolution, we can call it, with Cody Wright and Bobby Vega. That I didn't playing at all until I started seeing those guys, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's completely new. I never heard anyone play with a pick until I saw Cody Wright and then Bobby Vega in that way. Like,
yeah, and I think that's one thing that really, really grinds my gears is people that me. I'm primarily a pick player, and people that are just like, put that pick in the bin, and then maybe it sound alright. It's like, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. Like, it's not. You cannot achieve the same thing with your fingers, and that's fine. Like, it's different things.
Anthony Jackson used a pick, didn't he? Like, he's one of the most ferocious fusion bass players there ever was. Yeah,
but it's not even like you need to put someone up there like, well, they did it, so it's fine. Like Jacko only had 4, so that's fine. It's whatever fits the purpose. Like, me, I really like that bright attack, and my technique lends itself to a pick. I can't get the same thing. I play differently with fingers, and it's just what I enjoy. And if I'm playing live, I like going mad and like hitting it really hard. Like you don't get that with fingers.
That is fun. Like, you can just strum the whole bass and mute the strings you don't want to hit.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that inspires different technique as well, because that is something you have to take into account. If you give someone that is primarily, that does slap bass all the time a pick, it's not gonna be the same. I don't mean doing the same line, but like if they just go and play a rock thing with a pick, they might be a bit sloppier because they're not used to that technique. It's a different skill set, really.
Do you ever watch yourself playing back a video? Like, obviously, we're a gig, a live gig. Do you ever watch the videos? It's kind of hard. Like, you look like, me personally, I was watching back a thing and I just looked like a crazy person. I was really giving it socks. I was like, I knew the cameras were on. I was going overboard.
Yeah, that's it. The photographer's looking at me right now. Right, here we go. I did the same thing, but I love it. I love being on stage and doing that kind of thing. I'm a showman at heart, So a few quick other ones that are of mine, I suppose, that are people that inspire me to get good. One that is a bit of a kid, teenager, like you said, like a technical one, is Clay Gober from Polyphia. I don't know if you know.
I had a lot of. Funny enough, it's younger bass players are suggesting this guy to me, but I don't know his playing at all. I know the band, like.
Yeah, so for those that don't know the bands, they're like almost like a math rock bands. But
handsome gentlemen, handsome guys with cool tattoos and good haircuts.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. I've seen them live a couple of times, and they're so good. It's all or majority instrumental, just insane guitarists, and Clay really holds it down on the bass as well. Like just
savage, yeah. And the drummer and the bass player do such cool dynamics off each other.
Like. Absolutely, and he's kind of got this like hybrid picking technique where he uses a pick, but then will also pop. Like slap bass, so it's this really cool technique, and it's like the syncopation, like you say, between the drums and the bass are next level. So I'd recommend checking him out. He does lots of stuff on Instagram as well, which is cool.
Does he? I must give him an old follow.
Yeah, he posts like just some playthroughs and things like that, and just some little clips, and it's really cool. The other one, which is still an incredibly technical player, but in terms of like the music is not as technical or like not like that, is Tom Doyle from the band Don Broco.
No, that completely over the head now. I'm too old.
Yeah, Don Broco, they're pretty, what you'd say, a current band. They're very hip in, hence why I like them. No, please, Jonny, future Jonny, edit that bit out. Yeah, it's one of my favorite bands. A real mix of genres that they do, but the bass player is awesome. Look up the song Super Love. Oh, and You Wanna Know. The verse line of You Wanna Know has an incredible bass line. Uses like a Spectre Euro 5-string, and it's so good. And their latest song they've released has got some great bass stuff. It's like technical stuff, but really it's only one guitarist. So it really fills out in the mix, and there's other stuff going on in the mix, but I'd just go and check them out. I'll leave it there with that one. But yeah, really cool. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. So this segment is a recurring one that we do every week, where I ask, before we record the podcast, I ask our co-host to send in a tone or a couple of tones. I forgot I did this. A couple of tones that they have recorded, maybe something they consider as like their signature sound, or just something that they're digging at the minute. It can be whatever. So ahead of this, I did the same with Stephen, asked him to send in, and he over-delivered. My God, he sent me so many, and they all sounded so good. But we're gonna limit it to two of these. So sit back, get those headphones turned straight up as you listen to these two sound samples here. Oh, you're making me. You give me gas right now of like things I just really want to do. Let's start with that first clip. So it's described as a pick bass with spring reverb and some octave. Now I've heard you talk about spring reverb before, and I keep meaning to delve more into it. It sounds so good here. first off, like, what is the gear that you're using here, starting with the bass?
Well, the bass I don't even have anymore. It was just a Franken bass. It was like an SX. I don't know what it is. It was an SX neck because it said SX on it. The body I got for free off someone, and the pickups were just in a box. So I actually don't know what the bass was, and I gave it away there recently. So.
Great.
Cheap gear.
Yeah, there we go. It's just do what you want with it. But I feel like the spring reverb and some octave in there is really playing a big role. So what is it about spring reverb on bass that you think really works?
I generally would use it mainly with a pick. It just gives this kind of ping to all the notes you play and it makes the bass kind of it pop out in the mix really nicely when you're using a pick. I think it's because you get those extra high hits with a plectrum, and then the spring reverb just works hand in hand with that, just to make it just pop that little bit more. It's quite subtle, the amount of spring reverb I'm using, but a good spring reverb will emulate a real. I don't know if you ever put your hand on an amp that had a real spring in it. It goes bang. It makes this. The spring moves.
Can you say that
again? The spring just goes crazy. So like a good emulation of a spring reverb when you're pushing it, attacking the string will make that kind of sound. So that's what you're getting.
Yeah. And it, like you say, it's not like super high in there. It's subtle. You almost would be like, what is giving it that sound? So I think it's having a massive impact, which sounds awesome. And I'm definitely after this going to go and play with some spring reverb because it sounds great, especially with that like, quick short notes that you're playing in there. I think it's really effective, and a bit of octave in there as well, so you can't go wrong.
Only about like the octaves only about 2 or 3 just to give a little bit of sub, but not a lot. And I'm pretty sure I probably recorded that through my Sansamp. Maybe I can't remember, but I will use my Sansamp as my DI or the Zoom B3, which I absolutely love that pedal. I'm obsessed with it. It's the best pedal I ever bought for practice and just home use, like.
Yeah, and it's got so much in there, all those effects. I've got one here, which I keep meaning to review. It was going to be this weekend, but I think it's going to be. I've got a wedding coming up, not my wedding. I'm going to a wedding.
You got to invite all your bass buddies to your wedding.
They can all join me for a live podcast as I get married. No, don't request that. So yeah, that sounds great. Sounds great. Really cool.
Cheers.
The second one that we listened to there was unmistakably a fretless and a bit of chorus on there. Now, I tuned into your live stream that you did the other day, and you're doing some stuff with fretless and talking about fretless. And I've never really. I'm a rock guy. I love distortion. I love treble and presence and Sansamps and playing hard with a pick. So fretless has never really been that attractive to me until now. And honestly, mate, it was you that like spurred that in me, where I was like, do you know what? Actually, I get it. Like, and that sounds great. People in the comments are probably like, who is this guy? What? Doesn't really like fretless. What? Until now.
Well, I get what you're saying, because like when I that's a DIY fretless. I took out the frets and put epoxy in and all that crack, like, and put in the jazz pickup, because you need the bridge really to get the fretless to sound, and to use round wound strings, not flat wounds, to get that, the moi as they call it, like. But I don't enjoy playing it, because I don't play a very, I mean, I don't enjoy playing it, trying to play it like you see people traditionally playing them, like with really nice technique and doing all these fast lines. I just play it like a rock bass, and that's the way I like playing it. And it really sounds kind of crazy, because I move around a lot, because it's harder to keep your intonation if you're not playing it in that more one finger per fret style. So that's why I move a lot when I'm playing the fretless, just to make sure I'm in tune,
Yeah, that's the thing. They scare me a bit. I think that's what it is.
Because you probably heard in the sound clip, nearly every note I'm sliding, I'm going, wow, and then back up and down the neck.
Yeah, but it inspires that, doesn't it? Because of that, it will inspire you to play something a bit differently, which will then translate into your writing. So I think it's really cool.
And I was using a good bit of the Sansamp on that recording as well. I had it around at 6 o'clock or up at 6, I'd say, because it has a really nice drive, the Sansamp, I think. I haven't really found either pedal that has such a nice natural sounding kind of drive on it, where the bass just breaks up really. It's the Geddy Lee sound is what it is really, like, he always, I think, has his SansAmp set around 6 for his whole career. Like, he has a signature one now, like, but that's his sound, that like a good bit of drive and attack. So I like that sound too, which I didn't even know was my thing until lockdown. I got to really look at my gear and figure out what I'm doing. And another thing I found out during lockdown, which I have been doing my whole career, is that you put your fuzz before your drive. And I've always done that, but it's just the way that the pedals are on my board. And it sounded good, so I never thought about it. But Ian Allison was saying fuzz before drive. And I was like, oh, I do that. Yeah, that does sound good.
I suppose then I guess I can kind of understand that where it's been driven, it's been pushed a bit more. So you want that on the end, I suppose, rather than the effect of the fuzz. Oh, that's interesting. Well, actually, I've got a drive in a box right here that was delivered today, which is going on my board after the fuzz. So that's great to hear. I was just going to do that.
Put the fuzz before everything. Put the fuzz like an envelope filter doesn't sound very good unless you have a fuzz in front of it. Then it just comes alive. So same with the octave, fuzz before the octave. Just put the fuzz before everything and it'll sound good.
Advice for everyone there. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for those. There's some really cool sounds in there. Let's move on to the next segment. The last segment is a question from Chris Storia. Sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong. Chris on YouTube, who's submitted this question, which is going to form the big bass debate. And it's a big question. It is, if you're marooned on an island with electricity, of course, which one bass would you want to have wash up on shore in a waterproof case with you? Now, I'm assuming that the waterproof case is just the bass and you wash up separately. You're not in the case with it, because otherwise I'd want something really like.
Someone sent you this question, did they? It's a very well thought out question.
I know, yeah. There's lots in there. You know that there is electricity because you can't have acoustic basses. I think they're trying to rule that out. So what bass would you want to wash up with you, and why that bass? And then they've put you were lucky to have a bass amp, cable, and cab wash up a few years ago, so you're all right. So we've got all the cabs and stuff we want.
Do I have my Zoom B3 so I can at least do some looping or something?
The Zoom is there. It was already there, weirdly, when you got there.
That was in my case on the flight. That's all I brought with me. Of course,
yeah, that's all you need. So this is that classic desert island bass question, but very well written out. So big fan.
There's no loopholes in this at all. Like, this is Hollywood level.
Exactly. So thank you for this, Chris. Yeah, desert island stuff. I think about this stuff all the time, and it's always changing. If you asked me like a couple of years ago, would have been totally different to my answer now, which is why this question will probably pop up a few times on this podcast. I'm not afraid to do that. Who cares? So for me, I think the thing that's mainly changed for me over the couple of years is my obsession with the P bass. I never used to be into a P bass until fairly recently, really, in terms of my
same actually
playing quote career, so I think it would have to have a P bass pickup in there, either a PJ or a PH. Now, I've weirdly enough, not played a PH bass before, but those are my two favorite pickups, like a H in the bridge. Like, I love a Stingray and I love a P bass. I don't necessarily love them combined, but to be able to have them separately, maybe that would be cool. I think I need to try a PH. Really, that's what this.
Have you seen the tribe basses? Have you seen them?
No.
They're like, it's actually sold. It says on their website, it's an evolution of the Fender Aerodyne. So it's a PH configuration, but it lets you split the humbucker into a jazz pickup.
Nice.
So it has like loads of combinations. It's passive. Yeah, and it's a Aerodyne with a humbucker, pretty much, and extra knobs.
Because I've had these kind of questions before, and I'm always like, yeah, PJ. If I had to have a signature bass, it'd be a PJ, because I love that sound, and like, you've got the P bass pickup in there, which is just so versatile whilst being so simple, and easy to control, and everybody's happy. And the thing with the humbucker in the bridge as well is that whenever I play my Stingray, I'm like, oh, I'm just always reminded. I'm like, why do I play any other bass? Damn, this sounds so crisp and the clarity is there. And, I know that's down to more than just that pickup, but yeah, like I just love that sound. Whenever I play it, I'm like, why did I ever doubt this?
Position of the pickup as well, though. Like, you know, am I right? On the Stingray, it's not really where the jazz pickup would be in the bridge, and it's not quite where the P bass pickup would be. It's more in the middle of the two.
Yeah, kind of. I'd say it's more towards the bridge. I'm just gonna spin round to my Stingray for reference.
Well, I know why the different, like why they put the pickups where they put them, and you can check that yourself at home with your own bass. It's where the most prominent harmonics are. So if you play the harmonic over where the P bass is, that's really prominent. And then the same with all the other places where you'll put a pickup. It's where the different really high ringing harmonics are.
Well, that make them, you know, obviously that makes so much sense because that's what the pickup's job is, is to pick up on those harmonics. That's what the sound of the bass is. You know, we're all learning things here today, aren't we? This is incredible. That's why we get a teacher on here.
I'm a bit more of a geek than I thought I was. I know nothing about gear.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm the same in other departments. I'm like, I don't know anything, and then I start talking. I'm like, I guess I kind of do. But then conversations like this make me realize how little I know. But that's fine. That's fine by me. I can admit that. Yeah, it's not quite like in the bridge position like a jazz bass pickup is. That's why I don't really like jazz bass bridges by themselves. That's just me. I don't really.
Yeah, I don't either. It's just a bit thin sounding.
Yeah, exactly. So I always like having that quote neck pickup in there as well. And yeah, looking at my Stingray there, it's not quite so in the bridge. It's kind of pushed up a little bit, and that gives it that fat, warm sound. So yeah, maybe that position, and then a P bass quite close to that pickup, I suppose, to have it that middle like P bass.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I would go for, and then probably like a Stingray neck. Because I've realised this question isn't.
You just
really,
made a Stingray with a P bass.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just making up a bass here. Hey, maybe Music Man can bring out one of those in their, you know, their monthly family collection. That would be incredible. I'd pay $3,000 for that, right?
Or just get a friend with a router to put a P bass pickup in your Stingray.
Hey, that's a good video idea. Let's do that. Are you any good? You any good with the router?
I'm not good at a router, but I could put a hole in and put the pickup in for you, no problem.
Stephen McGrath, great with holes. Fantastic. Yeah, so in terms of like an actual bass, I really don't really have an answer. I've just made one up because I don't really know of one that has that would tick all those boxes for me. At the minute, I am really enjoying this G&L that I've got. So if you ask me right now, I mean, out of the ones I've got now, if it was like, right, you gotta have one forever, it would probably be that, which is the SB2, which is a PJ bass. So nice and versatile. It's just got that P bass pickup if I want that, which is what I'll be playing most of the time, to be fair. And the neck is gorgeous. It's almost like a cross between a jazz and a P, which it's like, it feels like I've got a good bit of wood in your hand. Yes, I know how that sounds. But it's like a satin finish. It's really fast and comfy whilst not feeling too thin. So yeah, bit of a rubbish answer from me, I reckon, but let's go with that. The G&L SB2. What about you, sir?
Well, if I'm on the island on my own, I'm not going to take like my airline. I definitely have to just take a short scale, because I find for noodling and playing on your own, I prefer the short scale. So I'll be taking my Rumble Cat with me, the Epiphone Rumble Cat, which I just bought on a whim because I said I never owned the short scale, and it came up cheap in England. So this old man posted to me. He was really, really nice. I found him on Facebook Marketplace, and yeah, I would take that, or maybe a more expensive short scale. I can't really think of any. I don't get gas very often for gear, like, so I'd probably be happy with my Rumble Cat, because I find
you're a lucky man.
I find that like when you're playing on your own, it's fun to have the short scale because you're doing lots of chords and stuff, and kind of more melodic things, and you can do those big stretches. So for noodling, if I'm on the island, like I'm not going to need a rock bass, am I? Like, I'm not going to be backing up a band or anything. So
that is a really good point. Just a one-man band. Just get the crab over there on the drums. You've got the the mermaid over there on vocals.
Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson's there just doing nothing. Great contribution, Wilson. Thanks. Yeah, that's a great idea, having the short scale. I didn't even think about that. I would have been like, great. I've got no band to play with.
Yeah, I saw Sire brought out their short scale. It's kind of like a short scale Aerodyne. I'd love to have a go. Now, I did have gas for that. I was like, well, that's awesome. I'd love a go. I think Bully has one. He was using one. U5, yeah.
Lobster, but I've spoken to him about it. He's like, that is like the short scale for me. Like that is a great bass. And yeah, I really enjoy the short scale I've got, like I said earlier, I've got the Gretsch Electromatic G2220, I think it's called. And yeah, the short scales just have this different vibe about them, and tonally, but also playability. It's totally what you said about you just want to pick it up and noodle on it, because it's that string tension thing as well. So it's just being easy to pick up and play. It inspires you to do more like bends and things like that, I find. So it's just in terms of noodling, you can kind of be more like musical on it, shall we say, a loose term, Do
you ever write those kind of bass doodle things? Like I kind of was a big Metallica fan in the day, and it was kind of customary at every gig that Jason Newsted, Cliff Burton before he died did it as well, would have a 5 or 10 minute bass section, but he wasn't doing a solo. It was always like a little noodle, a little bass piece. Yeah. So I kind of started writing my own ones ever since I was a teenager. And the short scale kind of lends itself to doing that kind of stuff. Do you ever do that? It's like, often it's like a drone and you're playing cool stuff under it, but it's not super technical. It's just something nice sounding.
Yeah. Well, I don't, but like that's exactly the kind of thing that I mean, that it just inspires you to do something a bit different, and something that you probably wouldn't do on a long scale. And it sounds like, I feel like you need to have played a short scale to understand that. And I get the hype behind it. They're a different breed. Not in terms of like me functionality wise, what I would want all the time. I don't think I'd want a short scale. Like if I were to sell all my basses and just have one, it wouldn't be a short scale.
No, it would be they give off more bass. This is some science shit now. Like apparently, like the frequencies are more bassy than the other bass, even though it's short scale. But then when it comes to doing a gig, it's too bassy sometimes. The frequencies don't cut through as much. So yeah, for just as your number one bass, I think you need like just a standard type of bass.
Yeah, very interesting. Wow, Mr. Science teacher over here. Yeah, that's a great shout. And that Epiphone, I can see it on the wall behind you, is just gorgeous as well. Like,
yeah, and they're not expensive. Even new, I think they're only about, I don't know what, I don't want to say what I think is expensive or not, because then people will be wondering.
Just judge everything you've said before.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a Les Paul style guitar, and I think short scale Les Paul basses are awesome. I do not care for long scale Les Paul basses. I think they just look very strange. But
I nearly bought a Flying V short scale there a few months ago.
Wow.
A guy was selling it cheap in Ireland, and they were only a limited run Epiphones, and I was like, oh yeah, that's tempting.
Yeah, that's like a bit of history. Like, I wouldn't normally just buy this, but I feel like I need to.
But then I don't play standing up ever at home, and you can't really sit down playing a Flying V, so it's like, it's not the most practical.
You can if you like, but if you just prop it up, on your leg, but it's certainly a different kind of style of playing that is not comfortable to me. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. We've kind of gone off on tangents left, right, and center, but
we were very bad at staying on point. But it's not what it's all about, Jonny. That's
what it's all about. That's why we're here, just to talk plops about bass. So that wraps up a nice tiny little bow on our podcast that we've recorded today. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute joy having you on, and I'd love for you to come back sometime in the future to do another episode, because that's the great thing about co-hosts. We can have them back on to answer all these different questions. And let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this episode. If you hated it, then just
don't say anything.
Yeah, it's better to be not the what's the phrase that your mum always says? It's better to if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's a great encouragement for people to comment. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Slide into the DMs. It's a nice, warm, and cozy place. That's at Jonny Dibble on Instagram. Stephen, where can people find you?
Really easy. It's just at Stephen McGrath, Instagram, YouTube, and what's it called? Facebook. Oh yeah, I'm on that as well.
What's that thing called?
It just annoys me. But of course the podcast, BassCraft, Stephen McGrath's BassCraft. Yeah. Check out the episode. Jonny was the first non-Irish guest I had on back last year, so check that episode out. That's it, pretty much. I'm going to be quiet enough for the next while. I'm planning this crazy thing on YouTube, but I'm not going to say what it is because I'm kind of getting sick of doing it at the moment. So I don't know if I'm going to pull through. So
let's talk about it. But I've got a bit of an inkling into that, and it sounds really, really exciting. So definitely, I've put all the links in the description. Go and check out all of Stephen's stuff. Go and smash that subscribe button and give him a little follow. Get in touch, let him know what you thought about this episode. It'd be really cool to just let's get talking, and let me know who else you want to see on here. So once again, thank you so much for listening. See you next time.